The Medici. That name probably conjures up images of fancy palaces, gold, and maybe a bit of political backstabbing. But peel back those layers of history, and you find something even wilder, a family who didn't just control Florence's money and politics, they controlled its very soul. They didn't just buy art, they practically manufactured genius. And when it came to sculpture, these titans of finance and power had a very particular taste. They didn't just commission a statue, they demanded masterpieces. They didn't just pay an artist, they owned him, body and chisel. Get ready to dive into the scandalous, brilliant, and often dangerous world of the 8 sculptors who dared to impress the most powerful family in Renaissance Italy. Their stories are a tangled web of ambition, betrayal, and pure unadulterated talent. Number 8, the original rule breaker. Before Michelangelo, before Leonardo, there was Donatello. His full name was Donato di Niccolo di Beto Bardi, but everyone just called him Donatello. He was the first true rock star of the Renaissance, a sculptor who shattered expectations and redefined what art could be. Born in Florence in 1386, Donatello arrived just as the city was bubbling with new ideas, a place where people were starting to look back at ancient Rome and Greece for inspiration, but also forward towards something entirely new. He was rough around the edges, a bit of a brawler by some accounts, and certainly no smooth courtier. Yet, the most powerful family in Florence, the Medici, absolutely adored him. Cosimo de' Medici, known as Cosimo the Elder, the patriarch of the Medici banking dynasty, was Donatello's greatest patron and, some historians say, his closest friend. Cosimo was a shrewd businessman and a political puppet master, but he also had a deep love for art and learning. He saw something in Donatello's raw talent, a vision that spoke to the Medici's own ambition to make Florence the most glorious city in the world. Cosimo understood that art was not just pretty decoration, it was a powerful tool for propaganda, a way to show off wealth, influence, and a sophisticated taste that set the Medici apart from every other noble family. Donatello's early career saw him mastering the techniques of bronze and marble. He worked on impressive projects for the Florence Cathedral and Orsa Michelli, creating powerful figures like St. George, a marble sculpture from around 1417, which showed a youthful, determined warrior, a true hero ready for battle. This was a new kind of hero, one with psychological depth, not just a stiff religious icon. People were already talking about Donatello's ability to bring stone and metal to life. But it was with the Medici that Donatello truly unleashed his revolutionary spirit. His most famous work for Cosimo the Elder was the bronze David, created sometime in the 1440s. This statue is not just a piece of art, it is a bombshell. It is the first freestanding male nude sculpture since antiquity. Think about that for a moment. For 1,000 years, nobody had dared to create a completely naked male figure in the round, meant to be viewed from all sides. Donatello did it, and he did it with a swagger. David stands in a relaxed, almost playful pose, a young shepherd boy who has just triumphed over a giant. His hat is decorated with a wreath, his sword rests in his hand, and he stands casually on Goliath's severed head. The sculpture is slender, graceful, and full of a quiet confidence. This David was meant for the courtyard of the Palazzo Medici, the grand new palace Cosimo was building in the heart of Florence. Imagine guests walking into that courtyard, a private space, and seeing this revolutionary artwork. It was bold, it was sophisticated, and it was a clear statement. It showed that the Medici were not afraid to break traditions. They were patrons of innovation, unafraid of stirring up controversy. This David was not just art, it was a symbol of Medici power and intellectual daring. It was a secret handshake to those who truly understood the subtle messages embedded in art. Another iconic work for the Medici was the bronze Judith and Holofernes, created in the 1450s. This sculpture, originally intended for the Medici garden, depicts the biblical heroine Judith about to decapitate the Assyrian general Holofernes. It is a scene of raw power and dramatic tension. Judith stands triumphant over her kneeling victim, her sword raised, The pose is dynamic, the details intense. While David symbolized civic virtue and freedom, Judith represented justice and defiance against tyranny. When the Medici were temporarily exiled from Florence in 1494, after the fall of their rule, the citizens of Florence dragged the statue from the Palazzo Medici and placed it in the Piazza della Signoria, right in front of the Palazzo Vecchio, the seat of Florentine government. It became a public symbol of the city's resistance against tyranny, ironically, a piece of Medici art repurposed to celebrate their downfall. This shows just how impactful and symbolic Donatello's work was. Donatello's relationship with Cosimo de' Medici was unconventional. Cosimo often kept Donatello close, even giving him a place to live in his own palace. He put up with Donatello's fiery temper and often disheveled appearance. Stories say that Cosimo once offered Donatello a fancy new cloak to wear to a formal event, but Donatello refused, preferring his old, comfortable clothes. Cosimo reportedly said, "You are right, Donato, because your art does not need adornment, but your talent makes it shine." This anecdote, while possibly apocryphal, perfectly captures the unique bond between the reserved banker and the revolutionary artist. Cosimo valued Donatello's genius above all else, even above social decorum. Donatello experimented constantly. He was a master of schiacciato, a type of very shallow relief carving that created the illusion of depth with minimal projection. He was interested in human emotion and expression, pushing the boundaries of realism. His figures felt alive, almost as if they could step off their pedestals and walk away. He was not just depicting stories, he was inviting viewers to feel the emotions of his characters. His later years saw him continue to produce powerful works, though perhaps with a darker edge. His Mary Magdalene, a wooden sculpture from around 1455, is a haunting, emaciated figure consumed by penance. It is a stark contrast to the youthful David, showing the breadth of his emotional range. Donatello died in 1466, at the age of 80. Cosimo de' Medici had already passed away 2 years earlier, but his son Piero de' Medici, known as Piero the Goody, ensured that Donatello was buried in the Basilica of San Lorenzo, the Medici family church, right next to Cosimo himself. This was an extraordinary honor, showing the high esteem in which the Medici held their beloved sculptor. Donatello's legacy was immense. He paved the way for every artist who came after him, proving that sculpture could be a powerful, expressive, and truly innovative art form, and that art could be a potent symbol of power and progress. The Medici recognized this power, and they used it to shape their own legend. Number 7, the master of graceful marble. In the mid-1400s, while Donatello was rocking the art world with his bronze masterpieces, another sculptor was making waves, but with a completely different kind of magic. His name was Desiderio da Settignano, and he was the undisputed king of marble. Born in 1428 or 1430 in Settignano, a small town just outside Florence known for its stone quarries and skilled stonemasons, Desiderio grew up surrounded by the very material that would define his art. He learned his craft from the ground up, perhaps even working in Donatello's workshop for a time, though his style eventually blossomed into something uniquely his own, soft, delicate, almost impossibly graceful. The Medici, particularly Cosimo the Elder and his son Piero the Goody, were quick to recognize Desiderio's exquisite talent. While Donatello's work was often bold and dramatic, Desiderio's was subtle and refined, perfectly suited for the more intimate, luxurious spaces within the Medici palaces. He had an uncanny ability to make hard marble appear as soft as flesh, as flowing as fabric, or as light as a whisper. One of Desiderio's most cherished works, commissioned by the Medici, was the Tabernacle of the Sacrament in the Church of San Lorenzo, the very church that was the spiritual heart of the Medici family. Built between 1461 and 1463, this tabernacle is a masterpiece of delicate carving and intricate detail. It features angels with incredibly soft, almost ethereal expressions, their robes seeming to ripple with invisible breezes. The central figure of the resurrected Christ is rendered with a quiet dignity, his face radiating a gentle peace. The entire structure is a testament to Desiderio's mastery of marble, showcasing his ability to carve deep undercuts and create complex compositions that seemed to float. The Medici certainly appreciated this piece, as it adorned their family church, a place where they often prayed and held private ceremonies. It was a daily reminder of their piety and their patronage of the most refined art. Desiderio was also highly sought after for his portrait busts. In the Renaissance, a portrait bust was more than just a likeness. It was a statement of status, a personal monument, and a way to immortalize oneself. Desiderio excelled at capturing the individual character of his subjects. His most famous example is perhaps the bust of a young woman, sometimes called Marietta Palestrozzi, from around 1460 to 1464. This marble bust captures the soft, almost dreamy expression of a young woman, her hair gently flowing, her delicate features rendered with incredible sensitivity. It is a portrait that feels intimate and personal, as if she could suddenly speak. While there is no definitive proof it was a Medici commission, the family certainly collected such works, and Desiderio's style was highly favored in their circle for its elegance and human warmth. Imagine such a bust displayed in a private Medici study, a testament to their refined taste and their connections to the most skilled artists of the age. Another remarkable piece that shows Desiderio's range and his skill with children's figures is his sculpture of the infant Christ, sometimes called the Christ Child, from the 1460s. This small marble figure, likely meant for private devotion within a wealthy home, depicts a chubby, playful baby Jesus full of innocent joy. The sculptor's ability to capture the softness of a child's skin and the natural contours of a baby's body in hard marble was truly remarkable. It is known that Piero de' Medici, Cosimo's son, had a particular fondness for artworks depicting the Madonna and Child, and it is highly probable that Desiderio's work found its way into the Medici collection, contributing to the family's image of piety and grace. Desiderio's talent extended to funerary monuments as well. His most significant commission outside the Medici's direct palace walls was the tomb of Carlo Marsuppini in the Basilica of Santa Croce in Florence, completed around 1459 to 1460. Marsuppini was a chancellor of the Florentine Republic, a very important figure. The tomb is a grand, elaborate structure featuring angels holding garlands, classical motifs, and a serene effigy of Marsuppini himself. While not a direct Medici commission, the Medici, as key figures in Florentine politics and culture, would have certainly admired and approved of such a significant public monument crafted by an artist they favored. This work solidified Desiderio's reputation as a master capable of large-scale, complex projects, not just delicate busts. Desiderio had a workshop in Florence, bustling with apprentices, where he shared his knowledge and refined his techniques. He was known for his innovative approach to marble, using drills and fine tools to create almost translucent effects and extremely smooth surfaces. He moved away from the more rugged, expressive style of Donatello, instead seeking a harmonious beauty that appealed to the growing taste for classical elegance and refined naturalism. His work exudes a sense of calm and ideal beauty, reflecting the Renaissance ideal of human perfection. Tragically, Desiderio da Settignano died young, around 1464, possibly from the plague or another sudden illness at the peak of his powers. He was only in his early to mid-30s. His premature death was a great loss to the art world, and certainly to his patrons like the Medici, who had come to rely on his unique talent for their refined commissions. Had he lived longer, he undoubtedly would have created even more masterpieces and continued to influence the direction of Florentine sculpture. Despite his short career, Desiderio left an indelible mark. His legacy was in demonstrating that marble could be treated with the utmost delicacy and tenderness, transforming cold stone into objects of profound beauty and human warmth. The Medici recognized the sensitivity and ensured his works adorned their homes and their most sacred spaces, forever associating his name with their family's pursuit of artistic excellence. Number 6. The prolific portraitist. Another master of marble, who carved out a significant place for himself in the Medici universe, was Mino da Fiesole. Born in 1429 in Poppi, a small town near Florence, Mino came to prominence slightly after Desiderio da Settignano, though their careers overlapped. Like Desiderio, Mino was a master of carving in marble, but his style was perhaps a little more direct, a bit more linear, and incredibly prolific. He was the go-to sculptor for portrait busts and elegant religious commissions, and the Medici family made sure he was a busy man. Mino's training likely involved exposure to the works of Donatello and Desiderio, learning from the innovations they had introduced. He quickly developed his own distinctive approach. His figures often have a slightly more austere, almost severe beauty compared to Desiderio's softness, but they are no less captivating. The likeness and dignity of his subjects making him highly sought after by the wealthy elite of Florence, including the Medici. Piero the Goody, Cosimo the Elder's son, inherited his father's passion for art and continued the family's tradition of grand patronage. Piero was a connoisseur, and he particularly admired Mino's work. One of Mino's most important commissions for the Medici was the altar and tomb of Piero and his brother Giovanni de' Medici in the old sacristy of the Basilica of San Lorenzo. This grand monument, completed around 1461 to 1470, is a testament to Mino's skill and the Medici's devotion to their family legacy. The tomb is a grand marble structure, richly decorated with classical motifs and elegant reliefs. It features a finely carved sarcophagus, and while the exact effigies are debated, the overall monument showcases Mino's ability to create a sense of solemnity and grandeur. This was a crucial commission, as it honored the deceased members of the Medici family in their spiritual home, making Mino an essential part of their public image and private veneration. Mino da Fiesole was particularly renowned for his portrait busts. He created a significant number of these for various patrons, and the Medici were certainly among them. His busts are characterized by their clear-cut features, precise anatomical details, and a somewhat serious, dignified expression that captured the gravitas of his subjects. While specific Medici family busts by Mino are sometimes debated in terms of precise attribution, it is well documented that he created busts of prominent figures within their circle and Florentine society at large. His bust of Niccolo Strozzi from around 1454, or his bust of Piero de' Medici, attributed to him around 1453, exemplify his ability to render the personality and status of his sitters. These busts were more than just portraits. They were symbols of the individual's importance and taste, displayed prominently in palaces and homes, reflecting the intellectual and social standing of the Medici and their allies. Another notable work that shows Mino's connection to the Medici is the bust of Rinaldo della Luna from around 1461. Rinaldo was a close friend and advisor to Piero de' Medici. The bust, with its strong, defined features and direct gaze, exemplifies Mino's characteristic style. The patronage of such figures, who were intrinsically linked to the Medici, further demonstrates Mino's presence within the family's broader network of favored artists. The Medici understood that by patronizing artists who worked for their allies, they extended their cultural influence even further. Mino's artistic output was incredibly varied. Besides tombs and busts, he also created beautiful pulpits, altarpieces, and decorative architectural elements. His touch was seen in numerous churches and palaces across Florence and beyond. He worked on projects in Rome for Pope Paul II, and even for King Ferdinand, the first of Naples, showcasing his widespread reputation. However, he always returned to Florence, where the Medici remained his most consistent and important patrons. His work on the Chapel of St. Leonardo and the Cathedral of Prato from around 1457 to 1461, even though not directly for the Medici, would have been seen and admired by them. This chapel featured intricate reliefs and decorative elements, demonstrating his skill in storytelling through stone. Similarly, his work for the Cathedral of Fiesole, including the altar and bishop's throne, would have been known to the Medici, as Fiesole was a town closely tied to their family estates and interests. Mino da Fiesole's workshop was a busy place. He had a meticulous approach to carving, often smoothing the marble to a polished finish that enhanced the clarity of his forms. He was admired for his technical precision and his ability to combine classical Roman influences with the emerging naturalism of the Renaissance. He represented a more traditional, yet highly refined aesthetic compared to some of the wilder experiments of his contemporaries. The Medici, while embracing innovation, also appreciated the timeless elegance and dignity that Mino brought to their commissions. They saw in his art a reflection of their own desire for stability, continuity, and a sense of enduring power. Mino continued to work steadily throughout his life, adapting his style slightly over time, but always maintaining his distinctive clarity and precision. He died in Florence in 1484, leaving behind a vast body of work that solidified his place as one of the most important sculptors of the Quattrocento. His enduring legacy lies in his exquisite marble craftsmanship, his insightful portraiture, and his significant contributions to some of Florence's most important religious and civic spaces. The Medici ensured his talents were well utilized, making his elegant and dignified sculptures an integral part of their enduring artistic footprint on Florence. They leveraged his prolific output to fill their palaces and their family churches with art that spoke of timeless beauty and undeniable power. Number 5, the godfather of the Golden Age. If you wanted to understand the very heart of the Medici's artistic influence, you had to look no further than Lorenzo the Magnificent. And if you wanted to see who Lorenzo trusted to shape the next generation of genius, you looked to Bertoldo di Giovanni. Bertoldo, born sometime around 1430 to 1440, was not as famous in his own right as Donatello or Michelangelo, but he was a pivotal figure, a kind of artistic godfather who held a unique position in Lorenzo's inner circle. He was a pupil of Donatello, inheriting some of his master's raw power, but he also embraced a more refined classical style which perfectly suited Lorenzo's intellectual tastes. Bertoldo was most famous for being the director of Lorenzo de' Medici's sculpture garden near the Piazza San Marco. This was no ordinary garden. It was, in effect, the world's first art academy, a place where young, promising artists could study ancient sculptures from the Medici collection, practice their craft, and receive direct instruction from Bertoldo himself. And who was one of the most famous students to pass through this garden? Like a young, fiery talent named Michelangelo Buonarroti. Lorenzo the Magnificent, arguably the most culturally influential of all the Medici, saw art as more than just a display of wealth. He saw it as a tool to shape minds, to foster genius, and to solidify Florence's reputation as the intellectual and artistic capital of the world. He was a poet, a philosopher, a statesman, and an extraordinary patron. He understood that true artistic legacy was not just in commissioning finished works, but in nurturing the artists themselves. Bertoldo was his chosen instrument for this grand vision. Bertoldo's own artistic output was primarily in bronze. He was a master of small-scale bronze statuettes and reliefs, often drawing inspiration from classical mythology and history. His work, though sometimes overshadowed by his more famous pupils, was highly sophisticated. One of his most significant works is the bas-relief, created around 1480 to 1490. This bronze relief, which depicts a chaotic and dramatic battle scene, is a direct homage to an ancient Roman sarcophagus that Lorenzo owned. It demonstrates Bertoldo's deep understanding of classical art and his ability to infuse his figures with dynamic movement and raw emotion. This piece was likely a showpiece in the Medici Palace, admired by scholars and artists alike. Another important work by Bertoldo, commissioned by Lorenzo, was the bronze Bellerophon and Pegasus from around 1480. This small, exquisite statuette captures the mythical hero Bellerophon astride the winged horse Pegasus, ready for flight. It is a work of incredible detail and elegance, showing Bertoldo's mastery of the challenging medium of bronze. Such pieces were often displayed in the Medici's private studies or cabinets of curiosities, admired for their classical themes and their refined craftsmanship. They reflected Lorenzo's personal interests in mythology and his love for finely crafted objects. Bertoldo also created medals, a popular art form at the time, which were essentially wearable sculptures. He produced a number of medals for Lorenzo the Magnificent, featuring Lorenzo's profile on one side and a symbolic image on the other. These were not just souvenirs, they were powerful statements of identity and political propaganda distributed among friends and allies, further cementing Lorenzo's image as a Renaissance prince. But Bertoldo's most lasting impact was his role in the sculpture garden. Here, under Lorenzo's direct patronage, young artists like Michelangelo were given unparalleled access to ancient sculptures and the guidance of a master. Bertoldo encouraged them to study anatomy, to sketch from life, and to experiment with different materials. He taught them not just technique, but also the philosophy behind art, instilling in them a deep respect for classical ideals. According to historical accounts, Lorenzo de' Medici himself would often visit the garden, engaging with the young artists, offering advice and identifying promising talents. It was here that he noticed a young Michelangelo carving an old faun's head. Lorenzo was reportedly impressed by the youth's skill, but jokingly pointed out that old people usually do not have perfect teeth. Michelangelo immediately corrected the sculpture, showing his quick understanding and talent. This story, though possibly embellished over time, highlights the personal interest Lorenzo took in his artists and Bertoldo's role as the intermediary. The sculpture garden was a truly revolutionary concept. It provided a structured environment for artistic education outside the traditional workshop system. It fostered a spirit of inquiry and innovation, setting the stage for the explosion of artistic genius that would define the High Renaissance. Bertoldo was the heart of this operation, guiding, critiquing, and inspiring. He was the one who helped bridge the gap between Donatello's bold innovations and the future brilliance of artists like Michelangelo. Bertoldo di Giovanni died in 1491, just a year before Lorenzo the Magnificent himself. His death marked the beginning of the end for the sculpture garden, as it had been, and a significant blow to Lorenzo. Bertoldo's legacy is not just in his own beautiful bronze works, but in the countless artists he helped shape, especially Michelangelo. He provided the foundation, the guidance, and the direct link to the Medici's unparalleled patronage, making him an indispensable figure in the story of Renaissance art. His life shows how the Medici understood that true power lay not just in owning great art, but in cultivating the very environment where genius could flourish. Number 4. The Renaissance multitasker. In the bustling workshops of Quattrocento Florence, one artist stood out for his incredible versatility and his uncanny ability to attract the brightest young talents. His name was Andrea del Verrocchio, born in 1435. He was not just a sculptor, he was a goldsmith, a painter, a designer, and a teacher who ran one of the most successful and influential workshops in Florence. And like many of the great artists of his time, he was deeply intertwined with the powerful Medici family, particularly Lorenzo the Magnificent. Verrocchio came to prominence after the deaths of Donatello and Desiderio, stepping into the void left by these giants. He learned his craft as a goldsmith, a highly respected profession that required immense precision and skill. This background gave him a meticulous eye for detail and a profound understanding of materials, which he then applied to sculpture in bronze and marble. Lorenzo the Magnificent, the intellectual and cultural heart of the Medici family in the late 1400s, recognized Verrocchio's exceptional talent and entrepreneurial spirit. He made Verrocchio his preferred artist, commissioning a wide range of works that adorned Medici palaces and public spaces throughout Florence. Verrocchio's workshop became a hub of innovation, attracting young apprentices who would go on to become legendary figures themselves, including none other than Leonardo da Vinci and Sandro Botticelli. Imagine the creative energy in that place, with the future titans of art learning their craft from a master who was constantly pushing boundaries. One of Verrocchio's most iconic commissions for the Medici was his bronze David, created between 1473 and 1475. This David is a stark contrast to Donatello's earlier version, Verrocchio's David is more conventionally heroic, a slender but muscular youth, clad in a tunic, standing proudly with his hand on his hip and Goliath's head at his feet. His expression is confident, almost arrogant, a perfect representation of youthful triumph. This sculpture was also intended for the Palazzo Medici, possibly for a more public space than Donatello's nude David. It projected an image of Florentine civic strength and youthful power, aligning perfectly with the Medici's own self-image. The story goes that Leonardo da Vinci might have even served as the model for this David, adding another layer of intrigue to its creation. Another major commission from the Medici was the Incredulity of Saint Thomas, a monumental bronze group created for a niche on the exterior of Orsa Miceli, a public building in Florence. Completed around 1467 to 1483. This work depicts Christ revealing his wound to the doubting Saint Thomas. It was a challenging commission requiring Verrocchio to place two figures in a limited space while conveying profound emotion and narrative clarity. The figures are masterfully rendered, their drapery falling in rich, complex folds that seem to have a life of their own. The expressions on their faces are incredibly human, capturing the moment of doubt transforming into belief. This piece, publicly displayed, demonstrated Verrocchio's extraordinary skill in creating large-scale bronze works that could convey powerful religious messages to the entire city, a testament to the Medici's investment in public art that also served their political and spiritual agenda. Verrocchio also worked on funerary monuments for the Medici. He created the tomb of Piero and Giovanni de' Medici in the old sacristy of San Lorenzo, completed in 1472. This tomb is a magnificent marble and bronze structure adorned with classical motifs and elegant details. It showcases Verrocchio's ability to combine different materials and integrate sculpture with architecture, creating a harmonious and dignified resting place for the deceased Medici brothers. The sheer grandeur of this tomb speaks volumes about the Medici's wealth and their desire for lasting artistic legacies, and Verrocchio was the artist they trusted to execute this vision. Beyond major commissions, Verrocchio produced a variety of works for the Medici, including elegant busts and decorative objects. His bust of Giuliano de' Medici, Lorenzo's younger brother, from around 1475 to 1478, captures the idealized features of the handsome youth, showcasing Verrocchio's skill in portraiture. These personal commissions reinforce the close relationship between the artist and his powerful patrons. Verrocchio's workshop was more than just a place to make art, it was a school. Apprentices learned everything from mixing pigments to casting bronze. Verrocchio taught by example, demonstrating his relentless pursuit of perfection. He encouraged his students to observe the world around them, to study anatomy, and to experiment with different forms. It was this environment that shaped young Leonardo da Vinci's mind, encouraging his scientific curiosity and his artistic precision. Leonardo's early works show clear influences from his master, particularly in the meticulous rendering of figures and the innovative use of light and shadow. Verrocchio's artistic philosophy combined a Donatelesque realism with a growing interest in classical idealism and a meticulous attention to detail. He pushed for a greater understanding of human anatomy and emotional expression in his figures. His bronze work, especially, was renowned for its intricate surfaces and technical brilliance. He mastered the lost wax casting method for bronze, a complex process that allowed for the creation of intricate and highly detailed sculptures. Andrea del Verrocchio died in Venice in 1488 while working on his last great masterpiece, the equestrian monument of Bartolomeo Colleoni. His death was a significant loss for Florence and for the Medici, who had relied on his workshop for years to produce their most important commissions. Verrocchio's legacy is immense. He was a bridge between the early Renaissance and the High Renaissance, refining the techniques of his predecessors and directly shaping the artists who would define the next golden age. The Medici understood his importance, and by showering him with commissions, they ensured that their family name would forever be associated with one of the most influential and versatile artists of his time. He truly was the Renaissance multitasker who built a dynasty of talent. Number 3, the untamed genius. The name Michelangelo Buonarroti strikes fear and awe into the hearts of artists and art lovers alike. Born in Caprice in 1475, he was not just a sculptor. He was a painter, an architect, and a poet, a true Renaissance man who reshaped the very definition of genius. And his journey from a raw, tempestuous youth to an undisputed master was inextricably linked with the Medici family, who both nurtured his talent and, at times, drove him to despair. Michelangelo's early life was unusual. His father, a minor Florentine official, tried to steer him towards a more respectable career, but young Michelangelo was determined to be an artist. His talent was undeniable even at a young age. His big break came when he was just 14 thanks to Lorenzo the Magnificent. Lorenzo, with his keen eye for talent and his revolutionary sculpture garden run by Bertoldo di Giovanni, discovered Michelangelo. The story goes that Lorenzo was so impressed by Michelangelo's early carvings, particularly a copy of an old fawn's head, which he playfully critiqued, that he invited the young artist to live in the Medici palace. This was an unprecedented honor, placing Michelangelo in the heart of Florence's most powerful and cultured family. He ate at their table, listened to their intellectual discussions, and studied their vast collection of ancient Greek and Roman sculptures. Living in the Medici palace was Michelangelo's true art school. He immersed himself in classical antiquity, learning from Bertoldo, and surrounded by scholars and poets. This period, from 1489 to 1492, shaped his aesthetic, instilling in him a deep love for the human form and a profound respect for classical ideals. He was a protege of Lorenzo, a special favorite. However, this golden age of patronage ended abruptly with Lorenzo the Magnificent's death in 1492. The political landscape of Florence shifted dramatically, and the Medici faced expulsion. Michelangelo, then 17, left the palace feeling adrift. He moved to Bologna and then back to Florence, working on independent commissions. It was during this period that he created his Pietà, a stunning marble sculpture of Mary holding the dead Christ, completed in 1499 for a French cardinal and now in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. The Pietà showcased his ability to render emotion and form with breathtaking tenderness and realism, cementing his reputation. Then came the David. Commissioned by the Opera del Duomo for the Florence Cathedral, this colossal marble statue, completed in 1504, cemented Michelangelo's status as the greatest sculptor of his age. Standing over 17 feet tall, David was a powerful symbol of Florentine liberty and strength. Even though not a direct Medici commission, the family, upon their eventual return to power, would certainly claim pride in this Florentine masterpiece, understanding its immense power as a civic icon. The Medici returned to power in Florence, not always in a straightforward way. Two members of the family ascended to the papacy. Giovanni de' Medici became Pope Leo X in 1513, and Giulio de' Medici became Pope Clement VII in 1523. These Medici popes, driven by a desire to glorify their family and their city, brought Michelangelo back into their orbit, demanding his genius for their grand projects. Pope Leo X commissioned Michelangelo to design and build a new facade for the Basilica of San Lorenzo, the Medici family church in Florence. This project, which occupied Michelangelo for years from 1516, became a source of immense frustration. He spent years quarrying marble in Carrara, struggling with logistical nightmares, only for the project to be cancelled. He poured immense energy into the drawings and plans, but the facade was never built. This episode highlighted the often difficult relationship between the powerful patrons and the temperamental artist. The Medici popes were not as gentle as Lorenzo the Magnificent. They were demanding and often changed their minds. Despite the facade disappointment, Leo X and Clement VII were determined to harness Michelangelo's unparalleled talent for their most ambitious project, the Medici chapels, specifically the new sacristy within San Lorenzo. This was to be a mausoleum for deceased members of the Medici family, including Lorenzo the Magnificent, his brother Giuliano, and two younger, less famous Medici dukes, Giuliano and Lorenzo. This project, which Michelangelo worked on intermittently from 1520 to 1534, became one of his crowning achievements, though it was never fully completed to his original grand design. Inside the new sacristy, Michelangelo designed not just the tombs, but the entire architectural space. He created two monumental tombs, one for Giuliano, Duke of Nemours, and one for Lorenzo, Duke of Urbino. Each tomb features an idealized contemplative figure of the deceased duke, positioned above two allegorical figures reclining on sarcophagi. For Giuliano, there are night and day. For Lorenzo, there are dawn and dusk. These figures, heavy with symbolism and profound melancholia, are among Michelangelo's most famous sculptures. Night is a powerful, sorrowful female nude, while day is a muscular, brooding male. Dawn is a beautiful, awakening figure, and dusk is a weary, fading male. Michelangelo imbued these figures with a deep sense of human struggle and contemplation. The architecture itself, with its innovative use of niches and classical elements, was revolutionary, foreshadowing Baroque styles. He was both architect and sculptor, creating a unified vision of solemn grandeur. The unbuilt tombs of Lorenzo the Magnificent and Giuliano the Elder were to be equally grand, with more figures, but only the Madonna and Child, flanked by Saints Cosmas and Damian, was completed for their altar. The political turmoil of Florence in the 1520s further complicated Michelangelo's work for the Medici. When Florence rebelled against Medici rule in 1527, Michelangelo, a staunch Republican at heart, sided with the city. He even helped design fortifications to defend Florence against the Medici forces, who were backed by the Pope. This was a direct betrayal of his patrons. However, after the Medici eventually triumphed in 1530 and re-established their rule, Pope Clement VII, recognizing Michelangelo's irreplaceable genius, offered him clemency and even more commissions. It was a testament to his unique status that he could betray the most powerful family in Italy and still be welcomed back. Michelangelo's relationship with the Medici was complex, a mixture of patronage, loyalty, frustration, and rebellion. They gave him a start, sustained him through their papal power, and also put immense pressure on him. He produced some of his most profound and challenging works for them, works that delve into the human condition, fate, and the passage of time. He eventually left Florence for good in 1534, moving to Rome, where he spent the rest of his long life working for the popes, but the mark of the Medici, for better or worse, was indelibly stamped on his career and his artistic soul. Number 2, the Firebrand and the Prince. If you ever wanted to know what it was like to be an artist in the Renaissance, with all its glory, danger, and dramatic flair, you just had to read Benvenuto Cellini's autobiography. Born in Florence in 1500, Cellini was everything Michelangelo was not: a swaggering, boastful, often violent goldsmith and sculptor, but one whose undeniable genius matched his outrageous personality. He was a master of his craft, known for his intricate gold and silver work, as well as his monumental bronze sculptures. And like all ambitious artists of his time, he eventually found himself entangled with the most powerful Medici of his generation, Cosimo I de' Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany. Cellini's early life was a whirlwind of apprenticeships, travels, and scrapes with the law. He worked in Rome for various popes and cardinals, forging exquisite jewelry, medals, and large-scale silver pieces. His autobiography is full of tales of street fights, murders, and narrow escapes, all narrated with Cellini as the heroic, misunderstood genius. He was immensely proud, deeply superstitious, and fiercely independent, but he also knew how to play the game of patronage, even if he did it with a rebellious edge. By the mid-1540s, Cellini was summoned back to Florence by the newly established Duke Cosimo I de' Medici. Cosimo I, who had risen to power after the turbulent period following the death of Alessandro de' Medici, was a pragmatic and ambitious ruler. He was determined to restore Florence's artistic glory and establish the Medici as undisputed rulers of Tuscany. He understood the power of art as a tool for political legitimation, and he wanted the best artists to serve his vision. Cellini, with his European reputation and his Florentine roots, was a natural choice. Cosimo offered him a generous salary and a workshop near the Palazzo Pitti, providing him with the resources he needed to create grand works. The relationship, however, was as volatile as Cellini himself. Cosimo was a shrewd and demanding patron, while Cellini was prone to fits of temper, dramatic outbursts, and constant complaints about money and lack of appreciation. Cellini's most famous work for Cosimo I, and arguably his magnum opus, is the bronze Perseus with the head of Medusa, completed in 1554. This monumental sculpture, over 10 feet tall, depicts the mythical hero Perseus holding aloft the severed head of the Gorgon Medusa, standing triumphantly over her bleeding corpse. It is a work of incredible technical daring and dramatic intensity, designed to be seen from all sides, a true masterpiece of Mannerist sculpture. The creation of Perseus was fraught with peril and drama, a story vividly recounted by Cellini himself. He describes the immense challenges of casting such a large bronze statue, the furnace almost exploding, the metal solidifying too quickly, and his desperate, frantic efforts to save the poor, including throwing all his pewter dishes into the molten bronze to make it flow. He claims he almost died from exhaustion and fever during the process. The sheer scale and complexity of the casting were revolutionary for their time, demonstrating Cellini's unparalleled technical mastery. When Perseus was finally unveiled in the Loggia dei Lanzi in Piazza della Signoria, right next to Michelangelo's David and Donatello's Judith, it caused a sensation. It was a powerful statement from Cosimo I, declaring his reign as a new golden age. Perseus, vanquisher of monsters, was a clear metaphor for Cosimo himself, who had brought stability and order to Florence after years of political chaos. The severed head of Medusa was a warning to Cosimo's enemies, a symbol of retribution for those who challenged his rule. It was art as propaganda, grand and unequivocal. Cellini also created some exquisite smaller works for Cosimo, though often with much complaint from the artist about payment and lack of recognition. His famous salt cellar, or saliera, created in 1543 for Francis I of France, is a testament to his unparalleled skill as a goldsmith. While not for Cosimo, it showcases the kind of intricate, lavish work he could produce. It is a sculptural table ornament depicting a nude Neptune, god of the sea, and a nude Tellus, goddess of the earth, symbolizing the bounty of their respective domains, holding a boat for salt and a miniature temple for pepper. Such pieces were highly prized by royalty and nobility, and Cosimo certainly would have admired Cellini's capabilities in this realm. Despite his constant bickering, Cellini recognized Cosimo's power and his own dependence on the Duke's patronage. He was often held under house arrest, or threatened with imprisonment for his various offenses, but Cosimo always seemed to eventually forgive him, knowing that Cellini's artistic brilliance was too valuable to lose. Cosimo saw in Cellini a reflection of his own ruthless ambition and desire for grandeur, tempered by his absolute control. Cellini's life was a testament to the wild, unpredictable nature of the Renaissance art world. He was a genius, a rogue, a self-promoter, and a survivor. He navigated the treacherous waters of courtly patronage, often offending those in power, yet always managing to land on his feet. He died in 1571, leaving behind not just his incredible sculptures, but also his famously scandalous autobiography, which offers an unfiltered glimpse into the life of an artist who lived life as dramatically as he carved it. The Medici, specifically Cosimo I, understood that sometimes, to achieve true artistic glory, you had to endure the untamed genius, even if it meant a constant headache. They proved that they were willing to do so, to create a legacy that stretched far beyond their banking empire. Number 1. The Master of Motion. As the High Renaissance gave way to the Mannerist period, characterized by its elegance, drama, and sometimes exaggerated forms, a new sculptor emerged who would become the undisputed master of this style, particularly favored by the later Medici Grand Dukes. His name was Guillaume Bologna, born Jean Boulogne in 1529 in Douai, Flanders, which is now part of France. He was an outsider, a northerner, who came to Italy and revolutionized sculpture with his dynamic, spiraling compositions and incredible technical skill. And he became the preeminent court sculptor for Cosimo I, and his successors Francesco I and Ferdinando I de' Medici. Guillaume Bologna arrived in Italy around 1550, studying the ancient masters in Rome, but it was in Florence, under the wing of the Medici, that his career truly blossomed. He absorbed the lessons of Michelangelo, Cellini, and other Florentine masters, but he pushed their innovations even further, creating sculptures that were designed to be viewed from all angles, inviting the viewer to walk around them and discover new perspectives with every turn. Cosimo I de' Medici, who had endured Benvenuto Cellini's theatrics, recognized Giambologna's more reliable, yet equally brilliant talent. He saw in Giambologna an artist who could deliver grand, impressive works that would continue to glorify the Medici dynasty and cement their rule over Tuscany. Giambologna quickly became the official court sculptor, a position he held for decades, enjoying the patronage and protection of the Medici family for the rest of his long and productive life. Giambologna's most famous work for the Medici is arguably the Abduction of the Sabine Women, completed in 1583. This monumental marble group, standing over 13 feet tall, is a masterpiece of complex composition. It depicts 3 figures intertwined in a dramatic struggle: a muscular Roman man seizing a struggling Sabine woman, while an older man crouches in despair below. What is remarkable about this sculpture is that it was conceived without a specific narrative in mind. Giambologna simply wanted to create a composition of 3 figures, demonstrating his mastery of twisting, upward spiraling forms. The title and story were added later. The Abduction of the Sabine Women was placed in the Loggia dei Lanzi in Piazza della Signoria, a public square right in front of the Palazzo Vecchio, the seat of Florentine government. Its placement alongside Cellini's Perseus and Donatello's Judith was a powerful statement by the Medici. It showed their continued commitment to artistic patronage and their desire to fill Florence's public spaces with masterpieces that would inspire awe and communicate their power. The swirling motion of the figures, their dramatic expressions, and the sheer technical difficulty of carving such a complex group from a single block of marble left viewers speechless. It invited constant movement, a new way of experiencing sculpture. Another iconic work for the Medici was his bronze Mercury, created in several versions from the 1560s to the 1580s. This elegant statuette depicts the Roman messenger god in mid-flight, balancing on one leg, propelled upwards by the breath of a zephyr wind god beneath him. It is a work of incredible lightness and grace, capturing the essence of movement and divine swiftness. The slender, elongated proportions and the dynamic pose are hallmarks of mannerism. These Mercury figures were highly prized by the Medici and their allies, often given as diplomatic gifts to other European rulers, showcasing the refined taste and artistic prowess fostered by the Florentine court. Imagine these small, perfect bronzes gracing the studies of kings and emperors, a direct result of Medici patronage. Giambologna also contributed significantly to the decoration of the Fountain of Neptune in Piazza della Signoria, completed in 1574. While the central figure of Neptune was designed by Bartolomeo Ammanati, Giambologna contributed many of the bronze figures around the basin, including the satyrs and the sea gods. These figures, with their lively poses and intricate details, added a layer of dynamic energy to the grand public fountain, another major Florentine landmark. His work for the Medici extended to private garden sculptures known as grotesque figures, which adorned the elaborate gardens of the Villa di Pratolino, a country estate owned by Francesco I de' Medici. The colossal Apennine Colossus, a monumental stone figure integrated into the landscape, is a testament to his imaginative scale and ability to combine sculpture with nature. This kind of whimsical yet grand garden art was a reflection of the Medici's desire to create not just beautiful palaces, but entire environments of sophisticated entertainment and display. Giambologna was known for his systematic approach to his craft. He kept a large and efficient workshop, training many apprentices and assistants who helped him execute his numerous commissions. He also often worked in wax models before carving in marble or casting in bronze, allowing him to refine his compositions. His figures were often elongated and twisted, emphasizing beauty and grace over strict naturalism, a defining characteristic of the Mannerist style. He was a master of composition, arranging his figures in spirals and diagonals, creating a sense of restless energy. Giambologna's long and stable career under the Medici allowed him to produce an enormous body of work, ranging from monumental public sculptures to intimate bronze statuettes. Unlike Cellini, he was generally less volatile, focusing on his art and his workshop. He died in 1608, a very old man for his time, having served 3 generations of Medici Grand Dukes. His tomb is in the Church of Santissima Annunziata, a grand burial befitting a court artist of his stature. Giambologna's legacy is immense. He not only defined Mannerist sculpture, but also directly influenced the coming Baroque movement with his emphasis on dramatic movement and emotional intensity. The Medici knew they had a rare talent in Giambologna, and by providing him with constant commissions and a secure position, they ensured that their name would forever be associated with some of the most dynamic and innovative sculptures in history. He was the ultimate court artist, forever capturing the spirit of Medici power in flowing bronze and twisting marble.